In this video we're going to take a look at Kang Rim, a legendary Debuffer class Elune. With his base stats of high HP and high attack and a decent speed, he is quite a remarkable killer. That with his skill set combined make him very good at killing high HP targets quickly. As his grade improves, the stats become much better, and ending with a nice 51k plus HP and 10k plus attack, making him very strong as a magic damage dealer. As we start to look at some of his skills, his first skill, Soul Harvest, is a standard magic damage based skill that does substantial damage as it increases in level, allowing it to hit pretty hard at the end when it's maxed out. The special skill, which is very nice to have for him, is a Restrain. The Restrain makes it so that the enemy Elunes cannot take their turn and they do not do any damage to you. The damage of the skill does increase quite nicely. As the skill is its first levels 1 through 5, the Restrain is a 2-turn effect and will double if they have the Mark of Death, which we'll talk about when we get to the passives. That makes the Restrain 4 turns if they do have that. Once the skill gets upgraded up to its max level of 6, the Restrain becomes a base of 3 turns. The damage is fairly significant. The Restrain being 3 turns allows you to have really good turn denial on any target. This can be used even on the backline targets. If the target has Mark of Death, then the Restrain goes to 6 turns. This can also be useful in some boss fights where you may not want to or be able to use other Elunes to help CC the bosses, like in the cases of completing some of the daily quests. The ultimate skill is his one-shot skill. This skill will instantly kill any enemy Elune that have the Mark of Death. If it's a boss or they have instant kill immunity, it will do twice the damage. If any enemy on the field that you're fighting has Mark of Death, then this ultimate skill will not consume the normal 6 soul that is required to use it, even if you use it on a target other than the one that has Mark of Death. As a skill increases in level, the damage of it does become quite significant, so using Kang Rim as a boss killer or in world boss can help with the skill dealing substantial damage anyway, and with bosses having instant kill immunity, this will enable Kang Rim to deal significant damage to bosses once they have Mark of Death and without consuming any souls to use that nuking skill. As we move on, his first passive is the one that applies the Mark of Death. This will apply after you hit a target, the same target 3 times in a row. If, for example, though, you hit one target and then you switch to another target and then go back to the first target for 2 more attacks, it does not apply the Mark of Death because that target will have only been hit 2 times in a row. So the first time that you leave the Mark of Death, you have to hit the same target 3 times. As Kang Rim's normal and ultimate skills only can target frontline enemies, you would want to take out any tanks first if you're using him in PvP, so target the front line first. That way you can apply the Mark of Death as fast as possible, killing it and then moving on to the back line. The Mark of Death can only be on one target at any time, and if the Mark of Death is on a different target than the one you would like, and you attack a different target 3 times, the Mark of Death will be removed from the first one and put on the one that you attacked 3 times. The passive skill number 2 for it, Accompany. This one makes it so that whenever Kang Rim kills an enemy that has Mark of Death, the Mark of Death will instantly be applied to another enemy target. The enemy target is random, so it can be any of them. You don't get to choose. But this means that you do not have to start stacking up Mark of Death again on another target. Meaning that once you kill, for example, in PvP, a frontline tank, where they potentially might only have 1 Elune in the front as a tank and 4 in the back line, once you hit the tank 3 times and then use Mark of Death on it, then the 4th hit you would use the ultimate, instantly killing the tank. The Mark of Death then gets applied to a random one of the 4 in the back. The Mark of Death cannot be removed as it is a soul effect, so it cannot be cleansed or removed. It will always be there until that Elune is dead, or you hit another target 3 times with Kang Rim to transfer the Mark of Death to a different target. With the Mark of Death being transferred instantly after killing, say, the frontline tank, you can then use Kang Rim's special skill to then put the restrain on the target that now has the new target with Mark of Death and apply a 6-turn restrain to that target, meaning that target will not be moving or doing anything for quite some time. The third skill, Evil Scheme, allows Kang Rim to do damage if he's hit with a killing blow. Once someone attempts to kill Kang Rim, he will do soul damage based on 50% of his max HP, meaning so that it hits them, meaning that even if they have a shield or some type of barrier or something that prevents them from taking damage, soul damage will always be applied through that, and they will take damage equal to 50% of his max HP. So the higher the max HP that Kang Rim has, the more soul damage they take. So for example, if you're attempting to kill an enemy Kang Rim and the enemy Kang Rim, say, has 50k of max HP and you attempt to kill it and you have 20k on the Elune that you're using to kill him, you will take 25k of soul damage, meaning that you kill yourself. And if you die, then Kang Rim lives. He revives himself instantly and gives himself half of his HP because that's how much damage he used to kill you with. If Kang Rim is the last one on the battlefield, then this will not activate. So if you save him for last, if you're attempting to kill him and you kill him, it does not activate and he will die, meaning he cannot come back to life. The other thing that this also does, it also allows him to make sure that if he kills any enemy, that they cannot be revived. Kang Rim's passive makes it so that once an enemy has been killed by him on his first passive, that enemy cannot be revived, nor can any of their ignore death mechanics be triggered. Meaning that if you use Kang Rim, for example, on enemy Elunes that have immune to death mechanics, such as Fabian, a epic healer, which prevents him from dying and gives him immunity, instead he will die instantly. If you use this on, say, the legendary Elune McCarthy, who also has a death prevention mechanic and instantly gains a turn, well, 2 turns, when you try to kill him before he dies, this will instead kill the McCarthy and not allow him to take any turns. This also means too that the Elunes cannot be revived. So again, if the enemy has a reviver Elune and Kang Rim kills them with any skill, it doesn't matter which skill you use, if he kills them, they cannot be revived at all. Also, with it being part of the passive, you do not need to use the ultimate skill to kill somebody to make sure that they cannot be revived, nor does it matter if you use it or not to kill them, to use to gain the ignored death. This, as a passive, applies to every skill that he has. We'll now move on and take a look at some of his skill gem effects. His skill 1 skill gem effect has a 5% chance to panic the target for 1 turn. Very low chance, not exactly that great, but the skill gems that are recommended are still good. They allow for more magic damage and a higher crit rate. This means that as you use a skill 1, he has a better chance of doing damage. The skill 2 gem effect is a 10% chance to heal for 5% of his max HP when he restrains an enemy. With the skill being spammable, it is a way to help sustain him without having to revive on a healer, but again, the chance is low. So the chances of you doing this are not very high. Again, you could use other skill gems here to increase the damage or to increase anything else, but there wouldn't be anything to increase the turn number of the restrain effect, and that is the main effect that this skill applies. Therefore, using other skills to trying to extend the effect will not work. This would pretty much just be used as a damage skill, or you can use the skill gems that are recommended here and have a better chance of healing yourself. His ultimate skill gem effects are for damage, crit rate, and speed, and it's a 20% chance to obtain 2 souls when he uses this and instantly kills an enemy, which is pretty much the only time that you're going to be using it. Now, with the fact that this skill does not consume any souls if the enemy or any enemy has Mark of Death, this means by putting these skill gems on him, this skill now has a 20% chance to gain 2 souls instead of using any souls at all. This means that each time you instantly kill an enemy with this skill, then there is a 20% chance that he can gain souls for your entire team. Continuing on, we'll take a look at some gear possibilities. Some of the gear options, as the one that I've used on my Kang Rim, is the Great Spirit set. The reason that I opted for this set is because it gives him the chance to act one more time, meaning that as he's used, you have the chance to apply the 3 hits needed to get the Mark of Death effect on an enemy Elune faster, but it also allows him that maybe on subsequent turns to get his cooldown on his ultimate skill faster so he can use it to nuke down enemies. You could go, if you want to use them as a high magic damage dealer, you could go with the Baron J set and have high magic damage. But to gain the extra crit bonus that you would want, you would need something to apply some type of weakening effect. You could also go with other sets, say that in the offhand slot you would be able to apply a HP gear instead of an attack gear. Since the majority of Kang Rim's damage is going to be used when killing in PvP with his ultimate skill that instantly kills anyway, the amount having high attack on Kang Rim isn't necessarily needed. You can get by with a set or a combination of sets, if you prefer, that give an HP to allow him to have higher HP, allowing him to do more damage if he is killed through his passive that does damage based on his max HP. Some other things to consider with Kang Rim is potential team members. Some team members that work well with Kang Rim that allow him to do good damage, especially in the PvP side, would be ones like Mana. Let me find Mana. Mana here would allow Kang Rim to gain additional turns through his second skill, the Manipulation of Time. This means that if you're using Kang Rim with mana, you can have Kang Rim move, or you can have mana move depending on your turn order. This would then buff Kang Rim, allowing, with a solo effect, allowing him to take 2 turns the next time he gains a turn. So you wouldn't have to rely on the RNG of, say, the Great Spirit set to gain the additional turn. This can help reduce cooldowns for his ultimate, or it can help apply the Mark of Death to the enemy Elune right away. By using this mana, say, to move after Kang Rim in the initial battle, Kang Rim would use his skill 1 or skill 2 first on an enemy Elune, preferably the frontline tank. This would then be used on Kang Rim to put the soul effect on him. So the next time that he does take a turn, Kang Rim would take 2 turns guaranteed. This would mean that Kang Rim would now have 3 turns by the end of his second turn, and the Mark of Death would be applied to the enemy Elune. You could then pass a turn from the next Elune back to Kang Rim, allowing him to instantly kill the target very quickly, and having your team then have to be able to focus on the back line with the enemy tank down. Another Elune to use with Kang Rim, if I can find it, is Lilith. The reason Lilith is good to use with Kang Rim would only be effective if Kang Rim is the only male on your team. So if you run your team, an attack team, say, in the air battles, then you would want to run no other male Elunes, including a tank. You could use Kang Rim as your frontline tank, but you could also use other things. The reason for only having Kang Rim would mean that Lilith, as part of her passive, she would only team up with him, and there wouldn't be any RNG involved. The reason you would want her would be to have her move with Kang Rim. This means every time that that Lilith gets a turn and Kang Rim is the only male on the team, then Kang Rim also gains a turn with his first basic skill. This would allow you to have Kang Rim take a turn and then Lilith take a turn, which also allows Kang Rim to take a turn with his skill 1. By doing so, you can stack the stacks needed, or the attacks needed on the target, to apply the Mark of Death faster. This will work on bosses, this will work on enemy Elunes, whatever is the case. She only attacks frontline first, which is fine because Kang Rim's ultimate only can attack the frontline first too. These are probably the 2 best options for using with Kang Rim to gain multiple turns effectively. You do not need to use Kang Rim with Elune such as Wei Wei for the attack buff. The damage reduction buff is nice for him, but the attack buff isn't needed, as most of his damage will come from his ultimate skill anyway. The Dimensional Slate form that can be used, but it's, from what I can tell, pretty random on what stats you get and where, so this will be different for each person, so it's difficult to go over what it is. I would say try to focus on him. If you do get it, I would try to focus on the HP spots and the speed spots to give him more speed. Anything defensive too, like the physical defense or the magic defense options, would also be good. The evasion, not too bad, and accuracy can also be helpful when applying the restraint. He does not need accuracy to apply his Mark of Death. It is a soul effect and will always land. Kind of as a brief summary now of Kang Rim, he is a very good Elune for killing targets, especially for PvP. He will work really well for killing off enemies. A lot of air battle teams like to do stall tactics where they use high HP Elunes, or high healing teams with, say, Wei Wei or Freya, potentially with Fahrenheit's or the new Trent healer. With those teams, they just have a lot of sustain. It's hard to get them down. With the high HP that is there now in the air battles, having the double HP, it's not as easy for other typical Elune nukers such as Chloe Van to be able to nuke someone down as fast, especially if the enemy team moves first and has a Wei Wei that will buff defense. It is more difficult to be able to one-shot anything with Chloe after that. Having an Elune like Kang Rim there means that you can use him instead of a Chloe. He still has the restrain option for CC, and on a mark of death target it's 6 turns, 3 turns once max skilled, which is good. It's the same turns that you would get with Chloe with the 3 turn. He would also be able to instantly kill anything, and that enemy Elune that he does kill would not be able to be revived, meaning that stall teams or revive teams would not work against him. And that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and let me know.